All right, good morning. I'm here with Kendra Hull from Acco Brands, and she's the licensing account manager. And we're so lucky to have her join us in all our licensing interviews so we can learn a bit more about the manufacturer's side of things. And Kendra, please, tell us a little bit about the brands that you're producing and distributing.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Jeanette. And Acco Brands is a large portfolio of brands where we manufacture for calendars, home and office, and back to school. Um, the brand or portfolio of our brands actually incorporate Need, Trapper Keeper, and Five Star for the back to school side. For home and office, we incorporate Daytimer, Day Runner, Swing Line, and Quartet. And then for the decorative calendar side, we have the Mead brand as well, Daydream, and AmCal.
It's a lot of different brands to keep track of. And they all,
It's
I suspect, have very different strategies in terms of the types of art and creative content that you want on them.
very much so. They all have very, very different, distinct strategies, in which case they consider licensing.
Right, right. Well, when you are choosing licenses from established brands and trending brands, how do you go out and look for the kinds of brands that you believe will increase sales and make the best product line?
Well, it is very different by product line. When we're
Excellent.
looking at back to school, that is very much driven by hot pop culture or evergreen entertainment properties.
Okay.
When you're looking at the home and office, that's more fashion or design based.
Mhm.
And then for decorative calendar, it's a mixture of both. It's appealing to the older female, who is our core demographic for decorative calendars, but then it's also an impulsive buy. So it's also highly giftable. So when you're looking at calendars, not only is it art based, but it's also entertainment based, hot pop culture, whether it's an entertainment brand that's a new movie coming out, an evergreen property, or let's say the hottest boy band that's going on.
Yeah.
Um, each strategy is very different for the line of business that we are supporting.
Yeah. Now, and calendars, if I remember right, they're a lot of times shrinking in numbers. In other words, they're going more toward very small niches, and you're doing more different types of calendars to hit those niche target markets.
We are the calendar category as a whole is actually made up of dual users. So when we're talking about technology, we do find people that are using technology for their personal calendar needs, but when it comes to family planning, they are still very much um, they're still very much linked to the paper-based calendar.
Mhm. Great. Well, what would make you decide to take a chance on a new artist or a new character for one of these brands?
On the calendar side, they take more risks, whether it be through a brand or through a hot movie that is going to be coming out, and it's all based on timing.
Hmm.
When it comes to back to school, they don't take as many risks. Back to school is not a driving category for brands and characters. Those are more driven by toy or apparel lines. So back to school tends to be a little bit more conservative unless it's an established entertainment or evergreen property,
So,
say a Scooby-Doo or a Hello Kitty.
right. So you're saying back to school really follows the apparel and toy when it comes to the hot brands. You'll see
Correct.
those, the apparel and toy leading the way. Okay.
Right, and we do get approached several times throughout the year for new, hot, cute properties, but it's more than just the cute artwork or what the property stands for. So much of this is, it's driven by retailer knowledge, and it's driven by what the fans or the end consumer wants. So when it comes to launching new brands and new artwork,
Mhm.
Our categories aren't really those drivers. We look more towards something that has worked in the past, whether it be a known brand or even a theme when it comes to artwork.
Well, and it sounds like if somebody does want to send you designs and artwork, and I work with people who are building new brands, but
Hmm.
also designers and artists, and and
Hmm.
uh, they're very interested in understanding how to do a better job in reaching out to someone like yourself. So
Gotcha.
maybe the station, not the stationery, but the home office products category might be a better way to approach sending in designs and artwork.
It would be. I will say that the home office area is very heavily fashion driven, and a lot of that stuff is done in-house. Now, that's not to say that the team doesn't review everything that we put in front of them, but they just like the back to school team are a little bit more apprehensive as well. So many times our buyers buy based on what happened or how things performed in the year before. We call that a Sally, same as last year.
Okay.
So,
Right. So one of the things they're looking at is how did things perform last year? What openings are available for where you don't have a Sally, I guess you'd say, right?
right, right.
And okay, that's pretty interesting. So how many different kinds of how many pitches do you get in a week or a month? Um, are you just inundated with proposals?
It flows throughout the year. People that have worked with us for several years, like yourself, you kind of know our timeline. So for decorative calendars, now is when we're receiving a lot of pitches. We do tend to receive a lot of pitches for back to school throughout the year, but just like any other line of business and the toy business, you're working so far ahead. Right now, we're looking at our 2017 edition calendar line plan. For back to school, we're looking at 2016. So we work a good year and a half out from the current season that we're in. And when it comes to pitches, they're pretty consistent all year around. I'd say in a given month, we get anywhere from 20 to 50 different pitches depending on line of business.
Okay. Well, that's good. I actually might have expected you got more. So I think that's really appreciate your being specific as that. So are most of the presentations appropriate, do you feel? Or are people doing their research before they send them in?
It's kind of a mixed bag.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that the presentations are inappropriate. I would say they're more incomplete. When you're looking at or planning different line plans so far ahead, we really need to know the basics, basically stating what's your brand, what are the plans for the rest of this year, but following up, what are your plans in the following year and after in order to keep the brand relevant? And if you have any specific retailer programs that you are working on, because buyers can sometimes be subjective, they buy what they know. And there's only so much that a manufacturer can do when they're in front of a buyer to educate them within 5 minutes of what that brand is. So by hitting through not only your manufacturers, but also your own retail team or your own pitches at retail helps tell the story. So it's not that the presentations are um, it's not that they're inappropriate, but they're not complete. We need a fully fleshed out marketing plan for at least a year for a timeline.
Yeah, you are working so far out that that makes a lot of sense. They can't just assume that it'll because they've got something happening now that is relevant to when you'd be publishing
Correct.
because that's a year to 2 years out. So you are like a publishing company, just like the publishing companies I worked in New York. They were 2 years out.
Exactly.
I get it. I get it. All right. Well, let's switch topics a little bit and just talk about the upcoming trade shows and how you prepare for those and what you look for in terms of accomplishing at a show. So, like Surtex and Licensing Expo.
Well, and Licensing Expo, of course, that's a given. We attend that every single year. It's not only looking for and observing what the trends are, what everybody's talking about on the show floor, but it's also meant to keep in touch and have some face time with our existing partners. So many people use the licensing show as a launch pad for new announcements. That it's good to hear and see how other licensees or potential licensees are responding to the properties as well. When it comes to Surtex, we really kind of use that as more of a justification to see if we are on trend. Our creative and our marketing teams do extensive trend traveling all over the world. And when we get their findings, from a licensing perspective, we use those as a means to go out and try to find the trends that they're looking for in the properties and brands. So for Surtex, it's not so much shopping for new things, but it's more of substantiating what you're already planning.
And looking at the line and how color trends and style trends, and especially when you can look at both Surtex and the stationery show, it gives you that visual impact of being able to really kind of plot things in terms of the trends. Yeah.
Absolutely. When you look, I'll use the off-board trend as an example.
Yeah.
It was very, very hot for a few years, and when you see it being printed on stationery, when you see it being printed on greeting cards and letter,
Ceramics. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, that would surprise me.
when you see something like that, it makes you think, okay, how can we take this trend and apply it to any of our in-house brands?
Sure, absolutely. That's great. Well, what then are you at the licensing show? Are you looking for anything specific that you're wanting to? Are you adding any new products or looking for any kinds of new specific styles?
Well, there's always a chance to add something. Very much of what we do is in collaboration with our marketing teams, and we communicate with them depending on what we read, not only in the trade magazines, but I have to say it's a kind of a guilty pleasure. I read 17 magazine. I read Cosmo.
Good job, right? Yeah,
it's all it's all for the sake of research.
that's right.
So those magazines flagging what I think is appropriate or things that I'm seeing over and over again, it's an open line of communication with our marketing team so that they know exactly what we're seeing versus what they're seeing. And you can't discredit social media. So when we're looking at licensing show, it is, let's see what kind of new trends that we're seeing that are popping up, who's being represented by who, because let's face it, there's always that gettable get that you want, but you can't find the right person that's representing them.
Right.
So, licensing show. Right.
Executives, yes.
We do a licensing show for that reason as well. I mean, we always try to mark out time to where we can just roam the floor and
Yeah.
call if we have to.
Well, I'm excited because being in the art and design section, as we are this year, as the research center, it is really fun to see the new and upcoming artists and how excited they are. And they're not just all artists. I mean, there's a lot of new, just characters and designs, and people are getting creative. But I do tell people that executives like yourself, they come walk through that art and design section because it's where there are fresh ideas. Once they've kind of sought out the properties that they have to have. They want to see what else is there.
Absolutely, and it's not just us as licensing people that are watching the show. There's so many, at least from our team, our marketers go as well. And we spend a lot of time rehashing when we get back what we've seen. Did you see something that maybe we haven't thought of? Is this something that you want us to reach out to? So there's two sets of eyes, whereas we're looking at it as far as, okay, what could the deal structure look like? Marketing's looking at it as, is this a substantial brand that I can actually use in my product development?
Right. How long will it last? What kind of effort do you have to put into building it versus what they're already put into it? Things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, what kind of last minute advice could you give artists and people new to the industry in terms of, say, going to the licensing expo and things that they might want to ways they might want to approach showing their art?
You know, I don't think that it's any different than somebody who's developing a product. Make sure and do your research. Is there anything else like it out there? And what necessarily makes yours different? You know, so many times it could be just a colorway that makes it just right, that gives you an extra edge over your competition. But I have to say there are plenty of times when we're approached by a lot of lookalikes. So when you're talking to a licensing executive and you're wanting to start out and potentially do a licensing deal, make sure that there's a point of differentiation and make sure that's very clear in your presentations.
Oh, I think that's really, really good advice because I think that a lot of people create what they want to create, but they forget that market research, which is so much easier to do than it used to be.
It is.
Thank goodness, right? But
You know, it's the dawn of social media. I mean, all you have to do is throw something out there on Twitter and say, "What do you think?" And then you've got some sort of little quantitative research going on without,
yeah,
without really any effort.
or put it on Pinterest, and if everybody comes back with the same ideas, you should say, well, then I better tweak mine and make it a little different instead of
Exactly.
pitching it as the same. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And I've had to say that, and I've had to tell people that. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, this looks too much like something that we've already done, and it didn't do well, or we already have something like that in our line. And I know that doesn't necessarily help them, but it's something where you wouldn't go to an interview without having done the research of not only how you're different, but a little bit of research on the company and what they stand for. And I would say it's the same way for anybody that's making new pitches. Research the company, know what product lines they offer, and make sure you can differentiate yourself from the competition.
Great. Well, Kendra, thank you so much for taking the time today, and because I do think this information, hearing it from you directly, will help everybody, and hopefully you'll be getting some more well organized and not incomplete presentations, right?
It's my job to weed through it all. So.
Right. Well, great. Well, I will see you probably at the licensing show, and it's always great to talk with you. But I really appreciate your time and your efforts, and we will catch up with you soon.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. It was great having you.
Oh, great. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.